What's good, YouTube, man? It's your boy KB, and I'm back with another video, man. And today we got the downfall of Kyler Murray, gang. I don't know if y'all heard the news, but my boy Kyler Murray has been cut from the Arizona Cardinals, gang. Sad news, because I actually am a fan of Kyler Murray, but I'm not gonna lie, he is kind of ass. But let's get straight
Kyler
into
Murray
it.
is about to be cut or traded by the Arizona Cardinals.
Hold on,
And the
let me
reality of this situation is staggering when you remember exactly how hyped he was coming into the league. He's only
No
27
cap,
years
bro.
old and currently sits on a massive $230 million contract, yet he has exactly
Hey, drop
one
in the comments if you think Kyler Murray gonna have a comeback on another team, like
playoff
a
appearance
different
to show
squad.
for it. That single game was a disaster where he recorded
I
0
think so,
touchdowns
bro.
and a
'Cause he's
40.9
not
passer
like
rating
terrible,
during a blowout loss that signaled the
And he kinda
beginning of
fast.
the end. The Cardinals finished the 2025 season with Jacoby Brissett as their starter on purpose.
Nigga, are you Jacoby Brissett? Hold on, gang. Hold on, bro. This nigga look like Jacoby Brissett. I'm fucking up. Bro, say I'm tweaking. Am I tweaking? I might be. I might be dragging it. Yeah, I'm gonna give you
Never
the
thought I'd
benefit of
say
the
in 2026. To understand this collapse, we have to go back to the
But-
very beginning because the full story explains exactly how we got here. To
Bro.
understand where Kyler Murray is today, we have to start in Allen, Texas, a suburb that produces elite football talent like a factory. Allen High School is one of the most decorated programs in the entire country, and then a
Oh,
state
and I heard in high school he didn't lose a game either, bro.
that lives for Friday Night Lights. That reputation carries a massive amount of weight. Murray finished his high school career with a perfect 42-0 record, and he didn't just win games, he absolutely dominated the highest level of competition.
Bro, 42-0 in high school? Gang, like, bro, what? Imagine just like in high school, bro. It was an even playing field game. Like anybody could have took over. And we definitely had some powerhouses in our conference, but like in our specific area, like the East, we was in the East. It was up for grabs. Like and I feel like that made the game fun. If you get what I'm saying, like bro, we'll never know. Like this team might be good, we might be good. We'll never know.
In Texas, during his senior year alone, he racked up
42-0 high school game,
passing yards and 54 touchdowns,
gotta
while
be
adding nearly
motherfucking
1,500 yards and 24 more scores on the ground. The accolades
Some type
followed
of
the
good,
wins, and
especially
soon he
in
was
Texas.
named the Gatorade National Player of the Year as a consensus 5-star recruit. People across the state were calling him the greatest high school player Texas had ever seen, putting him in the same breath
Whoa.
as legends like Earl Campbell and Vince Young. That kind of hype creates a level of expectation that most players can't handle, but Murray seemed to thrive under the pressure of being a local icon. The thing is, football wasn't his only path to stardom because he was a legitimate MLB prospect with a cannon for an arm at shortstop. He actually pulled his name out of the MLB draft coming out of high school specifically so he could play both sports at a collegiate level. When it came time to pick a school, he chose Texas A&M
So he
over
played baseball
powerhouses like
and
Oklahoma
football?
and Oregon to stay close to his roots. He was supposed to be the savior of the Aggies program, and while he showed flashes in 3-star
Hold on, bro. Kyler Murray played for Texas A&M.
freshmen, the situation behind the scenes was falling apart. The coaching staff
I
was a
tweaking?
mess, and the relationship between the quarterbacks and the offensive coordinators had completely broken down by the end of the season.
He
By
didn't get
December of that
drafted
first
from
year,
there, right?
Murray was already in the transfer portal, which
Right.
was a much bigger deal
Oh,
back then because players still had to sit out for a
Bro,
whole season.
I swear that's a legendary pool, bro. Am I tweaking, bro? I did not know Kyler Murray played for Texas A&M. What the heck? Kyler Murray. Bro, I did not know that. He played one season at Texas, played for the season. How many years in college, right here? So 2 years, he played one, Oklahoma one. No, he played 1 year Oklahoma, 2 years. I mean, he played 1 year at Texas A&M, 2 years at Oklahoma. Bet. Swear I didn't know he went to A&M though.
He was simply a superstar who needed a new home, and the
That's
place
crazy.
he eventually landed would change the course of his life forever. Oklahoma is where the story really shifts. You have Lincoln Riley and that explosive air raid offense.
Lincoln
and that is
Riley.
exactly where Murray lands. The thing is, he doesn't just walk onto the field and start. He actually spends the 2017 season sitting behind Baker Mayfield, which gave him a full year to take limited reps and really learn the system. He spent that time watching one of the best QBs in the country run an offense that felt like it was built specifically for him. Kyler only showed up in 7 games that year, mostly just cleaning up at the end of blowouts, but he still managed to put up 359 yards and 3 scores without a single pick. Even in those tiny doses, the tools were obvious to anyone watching.
Didn't
the rest
Baker
of the world
Mayfield
wasn't
win
really paying
Heisman?
attention.
So they went.
Everything
Oklahoma
changed
went
in
back to back with
2018
the
rolled
Heisman.
around. Baker headed to Cleveland as the first overall pick, which finally gave Kyler the keys to the car. It's honestly hard to put into words what he did next without just listing the stats, because the production was flat out historic. Over 14 games, he racked up 4,361 passing yards and 42 TDs against only 7 interceptions, while adding another 1,000 yards and 12 scores on the ground. He was completing 69% of his throws and averaging 11 yards per attempt, which was the highest mark we'd seen from any major college quarterback in years. But here's a stat that really puts his dominance into perspective. Only 2 QBs in the history of the sport had ever thrown for 4,000 yards and rushed for 1,000 in a single season. Deshaun Watson.
Let's fact check. I know I'm doing a whole lot of typing, but I don't care. Most passing yards in a college season. So let's get it, bro. So he said that only 2 people play. Am I tweaking? Didn't he say it's only 2 people that passed over 4,000 yards? I might be tripping.
The history of the sport had ever thrown for 4,000. That really puts his dominance into perspective. Only 2 QBs in the history of the sport had ever thrown for 4,000 yards and rushed for 1,000 in a single season.
Oh, and rushed
Deshaun
for
Watson was the
1,000.
first to do it back in 2015, and Kyler Murray became second in 2018, meaning he was operating at a level almost nobody else could touch. When the Heisman Trophy came, it wasn't really a contest. He was clearly the best player at college football, and at that point, there wasn't much room left for a real debate. This is where the story gets a little more complicated, though. While Kyler was busy winning the Heisman, he was still technically a professional baseball prospect because the Oakland A's had taken him 9th overall in the MLB draft. That was the same year every major football program was trying to recruit him, and he'd already signed a massive deal with Oakland that included a huge signing bonus. After this Heisman win, though, Murray had to make a life choice between football and baseball. You have 2 completely different sports and 2 completely different futures, and he was the only one who could decide which path actually belonged to him. He ended up choosing football, and that one decision set the entire next chapter of his life in motion. Out in Arizona, the Cardinals had just brought in Cliff Kingsbury as their new head coach, and this is where the stars really aligned. Back when Kingsbury was a coach at Texas Tech, he famously said that if he ever had the chance to draft Murray first overall, he would do it in a heartbeat. On paper, the fit looked like a dream come true. You had a coach who wanted Murray more than anyone else in the league, and an offense tailored to his strengths, all while you had a franchise that was desperate for a brand new identity. The Cardinals finally had their guy, but the real question was what they were going to do with him. And a huge thanks to our partner Kalshi for sponsoring today's video. Since we're talking about Kyler Murray, I had to mark to the Minnesota Vikings. Actually happened. He is link down below, giving away Josh Rosen, who was a first-round pick they had taken just a year before, so they could grab Kyler at the #1 spot in 2019. At 5'10", Murray became the shortest quarterback ever taken with the top pick, and that was basically all anyone wanted to talk about. The height concerns followed him everywhere, from every press conference to every film breakdown, and skeptics wondered if he could actually survive at the professional level. During his first year, he managed to shut most of those critics up. His rookie numbers were solid, finishing with 3,700 passing yards and 20 TDs, plus another 544 yards on the ground. The team only won 5 games, which obviously wasn't great, but everyone knew this was a total rebuild, and Murray still walked away with the Offensive Rookie of the Year honors. He wasn't just getting by, he was making plays that didn't even really seem possible, using his legs to keep drives alive and finding windows that didn't exist. The sample size was still pretty small, but the talent was impossible to deny.
That's what
By 2020, he really started to look like the franchise cornerstone they were promised. He put up nearly 4,000 passing yards and 26 TDs while adding 11 more scores on the ground, leading the Cardinals to an 8-8 record and earning his first Pro Bowl nod. When that offense was clicking, it looked impossible to stop, and his ability to run started giving defensive coordinators nightmares because they couldn't decide whether to chase him or stay in coverage.
Go, though. Like, that's
2021
real life
was the year
speed
that
right
made
there,
all
man.
9 Arizona Cardinals fans feel like they were watching a Super Bowl contender. The Cardinals came out the gate on fire with the 7-0 start, and Murray was playing the most efficient football of his life. Even though he missed 3 games with an ankle injury, he still finished with nearly 3,800 passing yards and 24 TDs, which earned him a second straight trip to the Pro Bowl. The team finished 11-6 and fought their way to the playoffs for the first time in 6 years, making Murray look like one of the most dangerous weapons in the entire league. It felt like Kingsbury's system was finally translating to the end. The team finished 11-6 and fought their way to the playoffs for the first time in 6 years, making Murray look like one of the most dangerous weapons in the entire league. It felt like Kingsbury's system was finally translating to the NFL.
Oh my
and
God.
for a while, everything was trending in the right direction. Then the playoff game against the Rams happened, and the wheels fell off. Murray finished that game with only 137 yards, 2 interceptions, and a miserable passer rating of 40.9, as the Cardinals got absolutely embarrassed on national TV. He didn't look anything like the guy who led them to a 7-0 start, and the Rams defense, which eventually won the Super Bowl, exposed every single one of his flaws in a single afternoon. He struggled to see over the line when things got crowded, he held onto the ball way too long, and he started missing the easy throws that he'd been making all year. For the first time, people started asking a very uncomfortable question. What happens to Kyler when a defense actually figures out how to take away his primary weapons? The front office in Arizona didn't seem to care too much about those doubts because they were focused on the 3 years of steady improvement they'd already seen. They remembered the 7-0 start and the 2 Pro Bowls, and they still believed his rushing ability made him a nightmare for anyone trying to scheme against him. They were convinced his ceiling was still miles away. Because of that belief, they decided to sign him to a massive contract extension. And that is exactly where things started messing.
YouTube Premium is ad
Man,
free
Kyler
YouTube
Murray,
and the YouTube Music
I feel
app.
like what's the team called? The Vikings. He can either go to the Vikings, the Jets, or maybe the Steelers. Cause A-Rod talking about leaving. So we got the Vikings, the Jets, and the Steelers. But if he really want to win, I would say the Vikings, bro. Cause, bro, I'd rather
2022, the Arizona Cardinals decided to push all their chips into the middle of the table. They signed Kyler Murray to a massive 5-year extension worth $230.5 million.
Justin Jefferson,
a deal that was designed to keep him in the desert.
He got a whole bunch of
with $105 million of that money fully guaranteed, it's set at one of the biggest quarterback contracts in the history of the league. The front office wasn't just betting on Murray, though, because they extended Cliff Kingsbury around the same time to show the world that they had found their franchise duo. But here's the thing about the NFL. Plans that look perfect on paper can fall apart faster than anyone really expects. Almost as soon as the ink was dry, embarrassing details from the contract started leaking to the press. Buried deep in the legal language was a specific stipulation that everyone immediately started calling the study clause. It required Murray to spend at least 4 hours every single week watching film, and the team was so specific they mandated it be done without the distraction of TV or video games. The Cardinals felt like they were forced to write a please do your homework rule into a $230 million contract just to ensure their franchise player was actually preparing for games.
But I ain't gonna lie, bro. Why would you even release that type of information like out there, gang? Like, why is his contract, other than like the numbers, I feel like the stuff in the contract shouldn't be released, bro, so people to know. So now, really, I feel like the media took it and ran with it, and now it makes him look like he don't watch film. But in reality, they probably it's probably a backstory to it or something that we may not know. So like, we gotta start releasing these contracts, gang.
The internet reacted exactly how you'd expect, and the fallout was not quiet.
The
Murray already had a reputation as being a massive Call of Duty fan, and fans
we don't even need that, bro. Why we
where he
pocket
admitted
watching?
he wasn't the type of player to sit and grind film for 24 hours straight. When you combine
What the hell? Boy got a motherfucking cone here.
interview where he admitted he wasn't the type of player to sit and
But what the fuck, man? You gotta take the head out
grind
again.
film for 24 hours straight. When you combine that quote with the leaked clause, you get a situation that turned into a national punchline overnight. The team eventually removed the clause after the massive public backlash, and both Murray's camp and the
now it's
Cardinals
too
tried
late.
to walk the whole thing back. But once a story like that gets out, you don't unring the bell, and the narrative around his work ethic became a permanent part of his conversation. His new reputation followed him right into a 2022 season where absolutely nothing went right for the Cardinals. The year started with a disaster when DeAndre Hopkins, the team's best receiver and the only guy who can consistently beat man coverage, got hit with a 6-game suspension for violating the league's performance-enhancing drug policy. Murray then dealt with a nagging hamstring injury and a wrist issue in camp, which made the once dangerous offense look thin and completely disjointed. By the time they reached the 10-game mark, the Cardinals were limping along with a 3-7 record and looking like a team that had lost its identity. Then came December 12th against the Patriots, a night that changed the trajectory of the entire franchise. Murray went out for a scramble, planted his foot in the turf, and went down in a heap without anyone even touching him. He immediately grabbed his knee, the cart came out, and the diagnosis was as bad as it gets. A clean, complete ACL tear. His season was done overnight right then and there, leaving the Cardinals at 4-8 and facing a future that suddenly looked very uncertain. You can draw a straight line between the player Kyler Murray was before that night and whatever he became afterwards. The ACL changed everything for his career, and unfortunately for him, the entire Cardinals organization started falling apart at the exact same time his knee did.
Dang.
By January of
I still got
2023,
faith
the
in him,
house
bro.
cleaning had
He
officially
just can't
begun.
play for my Eagles.
Cliff Kingsbury was fired after a miserable 4-13 finish, leaving Arizona with a career record of 28-37-1 and a lot of unanswered questions. General manager Steve Keim stepped down for health reasons around the same time, which meant the entire leadership group that drafted and paid Murray was gone in a matter of weeks.
Dang.
The Cardinals decided on a total reset, hiring Monty Ossenfort as the new GM and bringing in Jonathan Gannon from Philadelphia to be the head coach. It was a new regime with a clean slate, and Murray spent the entire 2023 training camp on the sidelines while rehabbing his knee. He didn't actually get back onto the field for live snaps until week 10 of that season. If you look at just the raw box scores from his return, the numbers seem perfectly fine for a guy coming off a major surgery. He threw for nearly 1,800 yards with 10 TDs and 5 interceptions over 8 games, leading the team to a 3-5 record as a starter. On paper, it looks like a gritty performance from a player fighting through adversity to learn a new playbook mid-season. It's the kind of stat line that gives a fan base hope
But
that their
that icy
franchise
white
QB is finally back on
Cardinals,
the right
icy
track.
white, crazy.
But the eye test told a much more complicated story for anyone who was actually watching the tape. The scrambles weren't as long as they used to be, and that signature improvisation skill started to look a lot more hesitant than it did before the injury. Pre-ACL Murray could feel pressure and react instantly, using his legs and his instincts to outrun defenders before they even knew he was moving. Post-ACL Murray was much more deliberate and careful, and while he was still a threat to run, it felt like a managed part of the game plan rather than a natural gift. When 2024 arrived, Kyler managed to play a full 17-game schedule for the first time in years.
Let's see them
His total
stats,
numbers
bro.
were actually some of the best of his career.
Let's
He
get
put up
it.
3,800 passing yards and 21 TDs while adding another 572
Not
on
bad,
the
though.
ground. But the Cardinals still finished with a losing record of 8-9.
Damn.
He set a career high in
Oh
completion
my
percentage at 69.
God.
But the Cardinals still finished with a losing record of 8-9. He set
Bro.
a career high in completion percentage at 69%,
Nah, he known for
but his
making
average
shit,
depth of
though.
target dropped significantly compared to his earlier years in the league. He was completing more passes because the coaching staff was asking him to throw shorter, safer routes that kept him out of harm's way. This was his 6th year in the NFL, and despite the decent stats, he still had only reached the postseason one time in his entire career. Gannon and the GM
Bro,
were
it's the
watching all this very
Cardinals,
closely
bro.
from the front office. They were a new regime with zero emotional ties to that original $230 million contract, and they certainly weren't the ones who decided to draft Murray first overall. They were looking for a reason to believe he was still the future, but as the 2025 season kicked off, it didn't take long for the tension to finally reach a breaking point.
Let's get it. So what's really
2025
behind the
season
trade
kicks
right
off
now?
with
gang?
Kyler Murray still holding on to his spot and still technically the face of the franchise thanks to that massive $230 million contract. Through the first 5 games of the season, his stat line looks okay with 962 yards, 6 TDs, and 3 interceptions. While those numbers aren't exactly lighting the world on fire, they are functional enough to keep the team moving. Everything changes when he picks up a foot injury that the team eventually identifies as a midfoot sprain. It sits in the dangerous territory near the Lisfranc ligament, and even
Bro,
though it
they
isn't a
gotta
full
stop
tear,
wearing them
the
egg
swelling
jerseys.
simply refuses to go down on the timeline the medical staff originally expected. The initial diagnosis suggests a 3 to 4 week recovery period, and the fact that Arizona didn't put him on IR immediately shows they genuinely expected him to be back sooner rather than later. The problem is that a month goes by and Murray still isn't close to being 100% healthy. This is where Jonathan Gannon finally makes the executive decision to move Murray to IR, which officially hands the keys to the offense to Jacoby Brissett. This is where the entire vibe of Arizona starts to shift because Brissett doesn't just act like a temporary placeholder. He actually plays fine enough until the end of the season, even though they didn't win many games. According to reporting from Ian Rappaport, sources close to the building started indicating that it's more likely than not that the team will move on from Murray in the upcoming offseason. Now, that isn't a signed contract or a guaranteed departure, but when you hear that specific language from people that close to the situation, it carries a lot of weight. The financial reality of the situation is absolutely brutal for the Cardinals front office. If they decide to release Murray outright, they have to swallow a dead cap
bro.
of $57 million for a player who isn't even in the building anymore. If they could somehow find a trade partner to take him off their hands, that dead cap number falls to a much more manageable $18 million, but pulling off a trade like that requires perfect alignment between Arizona, Murray, and the acquiring team. Reports have surfaced that Minnesota might be a landing spot if Murray actually hits the open market. On paper, the fit makes a ton of sense because the Vikings are coming off a 9-8 season where they struggled with the ups and downs of JJ McCarthy's development. Kyler would provide them with a veteran starter who has a high ceiling, and he would finally get to throw to Justin Jefferson, who's easily the best receiver he's seen since the days when DeAndre Hopkins was healthy. The foot injury didn't exactly end the Kyler Murray era in Arizona, but it did give the Cardinals a very convenient
Kyler Murray
exit
to the,
ramp to start process they had
to the
likely
Vikings,
been
bro.
planning
Let's
for
get it.
months, if not years. When you look at the wreckage of this era, there's plenty of blame to go around for everyone involved. The Cardinals made a massive mistake by extending both Murray and Cliff Kingsbury at the exact same time based on one decent season before either had proven they could win a high-stakes game. That infamous independent study clause in the contract wasn't just a PR nightmare, it was a giant red flag that the trust between player and front office was broken even before the ink was dry. Kingsbury proved to be the wrong choice for the job, finishing his tenure with a losing record of 28-37-1 while failing to make his offense work at the professional level. Then you have Kyler Murray's availability, which has been a constant issue throughout his career. Between his ankle, hamstring, ACL, and now his foot, he has missed a total of 30 games. And when you watch him play, it shows that his elite running ability hasn't been the same since the knee injury. His talent is undeniable, but it isn't enough to carry a roster this thin when he can't threaten defenses with his legs like he used to. Kyler Murray's only 27, so his career is far from over, but this time in Arizona is likely finished. This whole situation seems exactly what happens when the front office, the coaches, and the QB never really get on the same page. And so there you have it, the downfall of Kyler Murray.
Bro, I ain't gonna lie, bro. It's gonna hit different seeing that man Kyler Murray in a whole different jersey. Now seeing him with that Cardinal on his helmet on there. But who y'all think gonna pick up Kyler Murray though, gang? For me, I feel like it shouldn't be a discussion. The Minnesota Vikings need to go pick up Kyler Murray. Now I ain't gonna lie, gang. If I'm the Minnesota Vikings, it's not like the best thing in the world, but it's the next best thing. So I go pick up Lil Murray, throw him on the squad again. Either them or the Steelers or what's the other team? I said the Jets, but who want to play for the Jets? But anyway, man, hope my boy Kyler be able to play on another squad, and turn up, man. You feel me? Gonna be sad seeing him outside of that Cardinal jersey, but the NFL is just the business. But if y'all made it this far in the video, man, drop a like, subscribe, and let me know what y'all think. I'm out.